Liz.
Liz, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. It's lovely to have you with us.
I'm so happy to be here. Are you going to be able to join us today?
Absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. I feel like we should just take everything out into the sunshine. Just go sit out there.
It'll be so nice, yeah.
Start to stream in.
The one thing I didn't do in a timely fashion is get a parking pass from Sony.
Okay.
But I assume she's downstairs, and thus there isn't even anyone
I was
who would
gonna
be
say-
reporting the car, and if they thought about it for 1 second, they would obviously
Well,
realize-
exactly. I think they almost have to like have somebody complain before they would report. Certainly down here.
And we're the ones who would complain.
Exactly.
Okay,
We're good.
I think we're good.
Yeah.
We will.
If I see
trust
her
in-
though, I will flag that for her when she.
Okay, thanks. Like I said, I'm sure she's downstairs.
I think so.
helping the teams.
She wasn't.
Exactly, and it says back at 2, so I'm assuming, and the code's there, so I'm assuming that this
I'm sure she's downstairs.
You
Yeah.
know the old
Sitting
saying,
at the lunch.
trust in God, but tether your camel.
Trust in God,
Yeah.
but
The
pay
parking
for
permit is tethering camel, so we'll just trust in God this time and forget about the tethering the camel. Parking.
Okay. And people will make their way down as they always do.
Yes.
Somebody said, originally, I think Lucy was saying originally she counted like 20 people. And then last week, and then I said, no, there were at least 40. And what happened was about 5 minutes after we started, everybody came in within the
Right.
first 5 minutes. So.
Liz, it's okay for the presenter to take the mask off?
Absolutely.
All right. I don't think you can, but we'll check with the. We'll. I was told that people out this way had to keep their masks on, but we'll double check that. Yeah. No problem. So, I'm not going to play guitar very much, so I'll just bring it up when I'm going to play.
Just these highs.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's it.
I'll make the adjustments.
Yeah.
if I need
You
to.
can. Okay.
Yeah.
You can do it. It's good.
Thanks. It's gonna be fine.
Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Yeah, good luck. Yeah. Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, good. Dave from Untitled Chapter. Oh, great. Hey, Dave. Did you get my response to your email? I did. Yeah, I never heard back from you. No, I'm still processing. No worries. No worries. Good to see you.
Before I introduce you,
Welcome. Welcome to everyone who is joining us in person and to everyone who is joining us on the live stream. I'm Rabbi Laura Duhan Kaplan, Director of Interreligious Studies here at the Vancouver School of Theology. We meet on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam people. Today is part of our semi-annual Commons Hour program, where we bring to the school an experience of spiritual practice from a non-Christian tradition. In a moment, I will introduce our leader, but first I would like to ask Richard and Stephen to come up to the mic and introduce some guests who are with us today.
Friends, you will have noticed online that we have hired a new professor of Anglican Formation and Studies, and he will begin the 1st of July, but he's here today. So Rob and Jean, his wife, are both here visiting with us. And they're here temporarily. Shortly, they will be here permanently. So welcome.
And I'd like to introduce another guest who's here. Some of as well. You will likely be aware that we're in the process of reviewing and re-engineering the theological field education program here at VST, which is very exciting. And we've got some grant money to do that. And we have a wonderful consultant by the name of Tony Robinson, who's here from Seattle. We're really glad to have him here. Welcome, Tony.
Another guest, our leader today, is Amir O'Loughlin, strategically dressed in purple. I didn't even have to say anything to get him to do that. When I looked at the bio that Amir sent me, I noticed that the word universal is very prominent in the bio. Amir is a teacher in the Inayati Universal Sufi Order. He's been a leader for decades in Vancouver's interspiritual music community. He helped found the Universal Gospel Choir. He's been very involved with Universal Kirtan. He has recorded several albums of original music that actually he didn't call universal Sufi music, but
You got to draw the line somewhere.
and he's also an experienced psychotherapist in practice for many years. And today you'll be inviting us into the universal space of the heart. So thank you so much, Amir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Laura. It's really an honor to be here, and I have so many wonderful memories of this room. We've had lots of Sufi events here over the years, and you know, I guess traditionally it's a Christian space, but this has had a lot of Allah being chanted very loudly in here, and it's still resounding. I can still hear it. So I'm really, really, really happy to be here and visiting with you. I'm hoping we can have some conversation as we go along. I'm hoping that we can maybe do some practice together, and I'm hoping that I can talk a little bit about the subject that's very near to my heart, which is the heart. And I thought that the last thing you would need would be a dry lecture about Sufism in general. You can all look that up somewhere, and maybe later on, if we have time to talk, I can answer some more general questions. But I really wanted to hone in on something that we all have and we can all relate to, which is this. So I was doing some reflecting this morning as I was walking. I walk a friend's dog who's just had some surgery, and it's such a beautiful, time of year, sunshine, blossoms, and I was thinking, oh yeah, 2 years ago when this pandemic started, remember how beautiful it was then, when we were first locked down in Vancouver, and it was just like this, and the cherry blossoms were all out, it was so beautiful, and we were all saying, oh, isn't it great, we're just gonna have a month or two, and it's already beautiful weather, no problem. But then I started to remember, as I was walking and seeing people, I started to recall what it was like to pass people. You all remember this? I'm talking back in the time when we were washing our groceries when we came home, like that level of confusion and fear and what's actually going on with this, are we all gonna die? So it's very different than how it is now. So think back to that time, and I remember walking along and people would see me coming and they would walk out in the middle of the street. They would give me like a 30-meter clearance, and I was thinking like, wow, am I going to give you COVID through my glands, through my eyes? Like, what's happening? But then I started noticing that I was doing that. I wasn't doing it physically, but when people were going by, I wasn't meeting their eyes. My head was down. It's kind of like, don't die, don't die. It's that level of protection that we were in. Do you all recall that? I hope it's changed for you all. I hope that things are freer, but I really was noticing back then, and of course I was wearing a mask when I was outside, I was noticing that I had really closed off something in me. Like a veil had gone across this part of me that I usually meet people. If I'm passing somebody, I will say, hi, how are you doing? Have a good day. But I wasn't doing that. And I was being treated as the same way. I was like some vector of great contamination. And I would feel in my heart, oh my God, my heart has got this big veil over it. In fact, it was more than a veil, it was like a blackout curtain. I wasn't feeling anything of these people except stay away, don't get sick. Do y'all remember this time? So I was so conscious of this deadening that was happening in my eyes. I wouldn't meet people's eyes, and so I hope that you forget how that felt, but I want you to remember it right now by doing it right here. So you're going to have to turn towards each other, and I want you to look at each other, but don't really let anybody's eyes meet you for very long. Keep your eye contact very fleeting. Now just remember, just try this with each other. Turn towards each other, but be really dead in your eyes. No smile. These people will make you sick. These people are vectors of contamination. Be very careful with these people. But don't let yourself spiritually be touched by them at all. Okay, so how does that feel in the heart when you do that? I know we were just pretending, but you remember this. How does it feel?
Closed.
Closed, yeah. Yeah. Cold? Yeah, yeah, very cold. Um, tight, yeah, yeah, yeah. So after a little bit of time, I thought to myself, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm going to really smile at people. But I was wearing a mask. How do you smile at people when you're wearing a mask? With your eyes, and the Sufis would say with your forehead. So there's this term in Sufism called the smiling forehead. And just hearing that, you know what it is, right? Even if you were wearing a blindfold and a mask, you could still smile at people with your forehead. So I started to practice this. And I would smile at people, and through my mask I would say, hi, how are you? Even the ones who were like walking 30 feet away from me, hi, how are you doing? Have a good day. And I'd be smiling through my eyes, my forehead, and then checking with my heart. Well, how was my heart feeling then? Much better. And I think they were probably feeling better too, I'm guessing, but I know I was feeling so much better. So now, let's do that with each other. Just look around, and you're all facing this way towards the conductor with the baton. Just face towards each other now, and now smile with your eyes and your forehead, but now you let the eye contact stay for a second. Like, actually let this person's heart energy come to you. Meet everybody if you can, and they'll be looking at somebody else while you're looking at them. That's okay. So the eyes are a transmitter and a receiver. I'm looking at you now, I'm transmitting, but I'm also receiving. But when we go into a certain mode, that shuts down. Do y'all know that feeling? Nothing's coming out, nothing's coming in. And that's what the heart is like. Gotta get some water. Does everyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay. So, I'm constantly being told that my eyeglasses are all smudged, and my partner says, how can you even see through those? And it's become an analogy or a metaphor for the heart. What was happening back then at the beginning of the pandemic was that my heart was becoming really smudged. And I was training myself to not let anything in. You know, and obviously you don't want the virus to come in, but I was training myself to let nothing in, nothing energetically come in. And the effect on my heart was very depressing, really depressing. And I pretty much feel like I'm through that, but it's been a tough 2 years for the heart. Would you not agree? I don't know how your heart has been, and I'm talking not just the physical heart, but I'm talking about the spiritual heart. It's been rough. Like, what have we been dealing with for the last 2 years? A pandemic, real obvious signs of what we all knew was happening around the planet and climate change. We've been dealing with, Black Lives Matter, Indigenous Lives Matter, all the things that were triggering that, which were really awful. We've been dealing with wars, and not just the one that's on the news right now. We've been dealing with a lot of wars that even if we don't know about them, we feel them. And we're really feeling this one because it's all over us. So the heart wants to just run and hide sometimes. You know, it's really hard to just leave that heart open and vulnerable and transparent and receiving and transmitting. So this practice that I just had you do, this is a practice that is in Tasawwuf, the Sufi way, looking at each other, and this is not like a touchy-feely exercise. It's actually walking by each other and letting your soul be seen and seeing their soul. And to do that, one has to have a very clear vision. The eyeglasses have to be really wiped clean. And it's a wonderful practice. So we're already doing this practice. And I recommend maybe after today's meeting, when you're going out, see if you are meeting people's eyes. See if you actually are, just practice this whole thing that we just did. It's a very simple practice. And it's not just a Sufi practice, obviously, it's a human being practice. So I'm hoping today we can talk a bit more about how we deal with this problem of the heart that's being bruised and kind of a bit battered by life. And it's not just the things that everybody's dealing with. We've all got our personal stuff going on too that difficult times, losses, the heart really takes a beating in this life. And yet it's the main instrument we have for experiencing beauty, sacredness, love, communion, all these things. So how do we then keep the condition of the heart healthy? So that's what I'd like to share and talk with you a bit about today, and give a bit of the Sufi viewpoint on these things, and maybe do some music. I hope to do some music. Laura wants me to do music, so do some music. Yeah. So what do you think of when I say the word heart? Because clearly I'm not just talking about the physical ticker where the blood gets pumped out of. I'm talking about the heart in the way that the poets use the word, and the songwriters and the scriptures. So quickly, just what comes to mind, stream of consciousness, when I say the heart? Caring, good. Life or light? Life with an F? Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Mood and attitude.
Mood, attitude, yeah. Spirit. Think of if you're reading a poem and you see the word heart over and over again, like a theme. What is it saying to you? Love. Yeah. So I would think that's where everything starts when it comes to the spiritual heart, is that we're talking about the seat of love in our consciousness, and it's a very vast seat. And the heart is this little tiny physical thing that the body is formed around, but the spiritual heart, the emotional heart, is really quite vast. And the Sufis say, well, the immanent presence of God is in the heart. We say the altar of the heart. That's where this immanent presence of God is. And if that's true, then what cannot be encompassed by the heart? If God can be encompassed in the human heart, then obviously everything can be encompassed. So this is a pretty big organ. And if that big organ is untuned, like if you took the tuning pegs of my guitar, God forbid, and all went, like my grandson does sometimes, let's see what happens now. That's what happens when you stop looking at people. That's what happens when you start treating people as a bit dangerous. Oh, they think differently than I do. Oh, they're anti this and they're pro this. Oh, all those things untune the pegs of the instrument that I'm talking about. So it's really, really important, since it's such a vast organ, that we keep it tuned. How do you keep your heart tuned? How do you tune those pegs of your heart? Let's share some notes here, because I'm going to teach you some of my techniques, but I'm just curious. How do you keep your heart tuned?
Use it.
Music.
No, I said use it.
Oh, use it. I thought you said music. That's my bias, of course, and I know it's your bias. Use the heart, but how do you use the heart then? In what way?
By doing what you're saying. Instruments don't stay in tune if you don't play them.
This is true. This is true. And instruments don't project if they're stuffed with everything they can't resonate. So part of tuning the heart is also keeping it resonant. Yeah.
We call him Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah said the heart is deceitful above all things. And so keeping it in tune would be a matter of practice of honesty.
Yes, it's a very strange bit of scripture, isn't it? I would say the heart attached to the ego can be very deceitful. But when the heart's not attached to the ego, I don't know how it could possibly be deceitful. I think it's the purest thing we have. So I would just add a little editorial thing to Jeremiah there, if I could. This is the way Hazrat Nayak Khan talks about God in the heart, one of the many ways. I'll just read these couple lines. I searched, but I cannot find thee. By the way, this is a version that is also found in all the other mystical poets of Sufism. This is actually a kind of a meme that's been going on for hundreds of years. I searched, but I could not find thee. I called thee aloud standing on the minaret. I rang the temple bell with the rising and setting of the sun. I bathed in the Ganges in vain. I came back from Kaaba disappointed. I looked for thee on earth, I searched for thee in heaven, my beloved. But at last I have found thee hidden as a pearl in my heart. So this is the Sufi point of view here, is that we can look for the divine presence everywhere outside in the transcendent, and that's all wonderful. But the place where we're always going to locate it is in the human heart. But it's very, very difficult to locate that if there are blackout curtains, if there's a lot of barriers. And what are those barriers oftentimes? The barriers of protection. That's how we get through life. We've been hurt, we've been abused, we've been traumatized, we've been rejected, all these things, and we start putting up all of the sandbags in front of the heart. So it's very, very difficult then to find the pearl if it's behind all these sandbags. Is that making sense, what I'm saying? So how do we clear out that so that we can actually find that immanent presence of God as well as do the mystical experience of the transcendent God? So this condition of the heart, how do we know what the condition is? Well, one way that we do this in the Sufi practice is we just simply breathe in and out the heart. So let's take a moment now, and I hope your masks aren't going to impair you too much, to just close your eyes, and this is not going to be a long meditation, it'll be half a minute. And just begin to imagine that instead of breathing in and out your lungs, you're breathing in and out your spiritual heart, that vast organ of consciousness that we call the heart. And as you do that, imagine that you're kind of your own physician of the heart, and you're doing a heart checkup. And you're simply finding, well, what's the sensation of this heart right now? Does it feel open? Does it feel closed? Does it feel powerful? Does it feel vulnerable? Does it feel unprotected? Does it feel protected? Does it feel loving? Or does it feel a bit unloving? So just breathe in and out the heart and see what comes, and it probably won't be in words. It's probably best if it's not in words. Just feel it. And now think of one thing that brings love to you, or a sense of beauty, or both. Just think of one thing, and the easiest way to do this is to think of somebody you really love. A child, a friend, a partner. And imagine that just the thought of this being is tuning your heart. Somehow the strings of the heart are becoming more harmonious. Now, here's the hard part of this practice. I want you to think about somebody who is very difficult in your life. Somebody who maybe has hurt you terribly, who you can't forgive. Just one person. And I want you to try to keep your heart tuned to the same harmonious pitch now. And just bring this person into your consciousness. Breathe in and out the heart. But don't let the pegs move. Good, that's enough. That's a very difficult part of this practice, so it's best to only do it for 5 seconds before the ego starts to go, yeah, and then they did this, and yeah, and then I'm going to say this to them. And, okay, how was that? Simple practice?
It was nice.
Good. Yeah. This is a very simple practice. And by the way, you were supposed to take something unchristian today. I think that was the word, non-Christian. I was raised in the Anglican Church. You can't take the Christian out of this boy any more than you take the Jew out of me either, because I also have a lot of experience with that tradition. So the Sufi tradition isn't bound by one religion or another. So all the things I'm doing right now are completely consistent with Christian work. So I'm sorry, I'm not giving you a non-Christian experience today. But you know, speaking of the heart, the Sufis, being kind of spiritual irregulars, they were rebels. You know, they were different. They didn't toe the line with any institutions or authorities. They've been here from long before Islam, even though the encyclopedia will tell you it's the mystical form of Islam. Sufis have been around way back before then. They were the first disciples of Christ, it said. They were really appreciated by the prophets, but they were also a little bit oddball and different. And as they took that differentness into schools of the Sufi way, they really ticked people off. The ones who were very invested in institutions and authorities and things being done a certain way, they would persecute them. And so the Sufis learned to have a code, and that code was the language of love. So if you've read Rumi, and who hasn't, you will see, oh my God, these are love poems. They're just talking like as if this is somebody totally in love with his first love. And all the Sufi poetry is like that. They speak of God as the beloved. They speak of the seeker as the lover. And they speak of spiritual ecstasy as wine. There's all this code. And they do this to keep out of trouble, and so they would be singing their songs, which in some Islamic circles wasn't even allowed to have music, so they would be just singing love songs. And of course they were singing to God. So much of that started to orient towards the condition of the heart, because the Sufis would say, if the heart is broken in the wrong way, there is no pathway to God. If it is broken in the right way, that is the fastest path to God. And so people would hear this kind of thing and go, excuse me, what? And so I would like to maybe, if I could, just read a poem by Rumi and start to maybe illustrate something that would help us differentiate those two kinds of broken heart. And the reason I'm doing that today is because the last 2 years, I think that humanity is suffering from extraordinary levels of brokenness in the heart. And all you need to do is look at the news and understand just how broken humanity's heart is right now. And that can be a really good thing. You know, the Leonard Cohen song, but everything has a crack in it, and that's how the light gets in. And I would also say gets out. You all know that line? So this is very much a Sufi thought, that this heart needs to have cracks and breaks in it. My late wife once commissioned a sculpture from somebody who knew nothing about Sufism. It was a whirling dervish in soapstone. And halfway through the process, the artist called my wife and said, something terrible has happened. You never know what you're going to get with the soapstone. And all of a sudden, as I'm working with this, a big crack came across the chest of this dervish turning. And my wife said, that's perfect. Don't worry about it. So now I've got this beautiful dervish with this big through here. And in the first lines of the Masnavi of Rumi, it says, Sine khaham sharhe sharhe as farag. I want a chest that's split open. Only then can I know the tale of love. So, anybody ever had their heart broken in here? Anybody not had their heart? Anybody not know what I'm talking about? So, it's tricky because if one has the heart broken and it becomes non-working, that's the wrong kind of broken heart. And that happens when we get very attached through our ego to the way things were supposed to be before our heart got broken, before we had this loss, before we had this rejection. And we start to have self-pity, we start to wallow in our pain. This is not the broken heart that the Sufis are talking about. That's not the crack across the dervish's chest. That is that's the way of having a broken heart that actually makes us very sick. So what do you think the good kind of broken heart could be? Is there a good kind of broken heart? Rabbi Laura, you know the answer to this question?
The kind when we cry when we pray, when we ask for help, when we deal with our troubles by offering help.
Good. You all hear that? So the cry part can go in both ways, but I think when you said that, I heard cry with a kind of a love, cry with sacredness, cry with beauty, and let it lead us towards love and beauty. So the worst kinds of losses still can be experienced this way, where we're just filled with beauty, and it helps open up our vision while we're having this terrible pain of the broken heart. And so Rumi says in this poem, don't get lost in your pain. One day you'll see that it's the remedy. Well, the remedy for what? Well, the remedy is for the broken heart, that your actual pain becomes the remedy. That's the good kind of broken heart, when you feel like, oh, this pain in me is actually leading me to what my heart needs, which is more love, more beauty, more harmony. So I'm going to read you this poem, very short one. You'll hear the love language code. One day your heart will take you to your lover. One day your soul will carry you to the beloved. One day you'll see, don't get lost in your pain. Your broken heart will become the remedy. So I've added to this song the Sufi practice of a mantra, of healing. And if you're willing, it'd be nice if you could say this with me when I'm singing the song. You can just try it out right now. Words are very easy. Allah, the name of God in Arabic. Try it. Nothing's going to fall down. Ya Shafi. That means, oh healer. Ya Kafi. Just like coffee that we drink, except it's, that's how you pronounce it. Ya Kafi, the remedy. And actually, this is linked etymologically to the word coffee. So if you think your coffee is really important for your health, it's absolutely true in mystical traditions of the Sufi. So, shall we stop the blah, blah, blah and have a little bit of music? Is that all right? Maybe some of you will even sing, because that chorus is really quite easy. Allah ya Shafi, Allah ya Kafi. And you can translate it into your own language of your heart, asking for healing for whatever is a little bit broken or bruised in you. I think if you're a human being, you've got something that needs healing all the time. So. Would you like to hear the original Persian of this? I'll sing that part. I wasn't going to sing it, but it's really nice to hear Rumi in the original language. Anybody understand Persian, Farsi here? Thank God. Because mine's not fluent. Hamdel bedel sitanat resanat ruzi Hamjan suye jananat resanat ruzi Az dast made damane dardی که تو راست هم در بدار مانم رسان روزی. And in English, one day your heart will take you to your lover. One day your heart will take you to your lover. come in. Boom, 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 boom. Allah, Ya Shafi. Allah, Ya Kafi. Allah, Ya Shafi. Allah, Ya One day you will see. One day you will see. Here's the prescription. Don't get lost in your pain. One day you'll see your broken heart will become the remedy. Don't get lost in your pain. One day you'll see your broken heart will become the remedy. Allah, Ya Shafi, don't be shy. Allah, Ya Kafi. Allah, Ya Shafi. Allah, Ya Kafi. One day you will see. So, another way to do this differentiation between the broken heart that we don't want and the broken heart that actually is a good thing is to listen to the words of the song and say, don't get lost in your pain. So when we have a broken heart and then we feel very lost, like St. John of the Cross talking about the dark night of the soul, that just being in that very dark place that's sometimes hard to get out of until we find the light that leads us out of that, and then everything is transformed after that dark night. It's a very, very difficult place. You can get stuck there for a very long time, really lost. I think everybody here probably has had phases of their life where they're really lost in that kind of broken heart. Right? Would you agree? So, the other kind of broken heart is the kind that actually is the opposite, that actually leads you to find yourself, to actually, you get to know yourself through that. It's a pathway to self-discovery. So instead of getting lost, you're actually getting found. Like, I just thought of Amazing Grace, once I was lost and now I'm found. That's exactly what the functioning broken heart is like. It actually helps you find your way. So if we try to avoid the broken heart by having a kind of a shutdown heart and always having sandbags over it and never letting ourselves be loved or love, well, we're actually going to never be found. So that's the good and the bad news of the broken heart, is that it's actually necessary for us to experience and learn how to let it help cook us and season us, to let us be more mature through the broken heart. So, here's another bit of poetry. How can I thank thee for thy mercy and compassion, O sovereign of my soul? What did you do when I was walking alone through the wilderness, through the darkness of night. You came with lighted torch and you illuminated my path. Frozen with the coldness of the world's hardness of heart, I sought refuge in you, and you did console me with your endless love. I knocked at your gate at last when I had no answer from anywhere in the world, and you readily answered the call of my broken heart. It's a beautiful poem. You readily answered the call of my broken heart. So if you've got the wrong kind of broken heart, the non-functioning broken heart, it doesn't call out, it implodes in. And that self-pity, that, but the calling out, that gets answered. Maybe not right away, but eventually that gets answered. And that's what St. John of the Cross talked about with the dark night of the soul. It gets answered. But you have to call out. Don't be shy. So, just looking at my watch here, is there any thoughts or questions so far? Because I've been doing a lot of blah, blah, blahing. Anybody have any thoughts or questions thus far in this talk of the broken heart? Yeah, Dave.
Amir, I'm curious about where the courage comes to reach out when you're in the broken heart place. Because I think I'm worried that we shut down and our hearts feeling broken and we're sad, and that we become inward focused, and at the very time we need to go.
I think courage comes out of desperation sometimes. And so we have to feel, allow ourselves to feel the full degree of our pain and desperation. Now, sometimes that can lead to shutting down, but really, if we're stuck inside a house that's burning down, we're going to yell fire eventually, and it's going to be scary, it's going to be, we're going to feel incredibly vulnerable, but isn't that where courage comes from? The soldiers that are going over the top in the worst part of a battle are not doing so because they're not afraid. They're doing so because they turn their terror into charge, So I would say, for me, in my experience, it comes out of that extreme sense of desperation.
I think when you say you better answer the call of my broken heart, I think different people come to different conclusions about who this you talk to.
Who's this you we're talking about?
Yeah, I'm not saying a question, I'm saying that, the conclusion, different conclusions on the different view that people land on can make a big difference in life.
Absolutely. It certainly is the viewpoint, always, which is the viewpoint and where we're landing. Absolutely. And these things live very close to each other, so it can sometimes just be a little shift of orientation this way or that way. Yeah.
I think it's a real gift for folks who have faith, because even when it's the darkest night of the soul, and even if you don't believe anyone's around and you're feeling alone, you still know that what you believe in is still there. But what I get curious about is in the desperate darkness of the broken heart, that's broken in a good way, that will be our remedy. There's still this period of time where we don't really have any guideposts, and we don't have anything to tether onto. And so I'm always curious for each person differently, sort of how long each person needs to hold the faith until they can see that guidepost, or how quickly guideposts come to some and not others, how they're there when you don't know them, and then you can recognize them if you practice. So that's the piece that I find really curious about the broken heart time.
Yeah. Look, if the broken heart doesn't lead us to a test of faith, it's probably not broken enough yet. We'll get there eventually because it will be broken enough. And it's really I find it quite tragic when people have tragedies that happen, like death losses, for example, and they lose their faith in God, and it never comes back. It's not an in-between place, it's a dead end. I find that to be so painful when that happens. And it's because I believe that their faith was based on the erroneous assumption that God was always going to take care of them if they just believed enough. And we all know that that doesn't really meet the test of time. So, but I do think that it's a necessary part of everybody's spiritual path. If your faith is rock solid for your whole lifetime, I just wonder how narrow your path has been. So, yeah, and these are hard tests, very hard tests. Yeah.
I guess just, I'm curious how you get from one to the other. So,
Which one to the other?
so the sort of wrong broken heart to the right broken heart.
Yeah. Well, the first thing you do is you do a lot of heart check-in. And when you're checking into your heart, you find your heart feels sick. It feels like... It's amazing how few people do this, to actually check in with your heart and go, uh-oh, that's not a good state. You know, it's like doing a mole check for, you know, like once in a while you just actually check your body and go, uh-oh. And so you need to check your heart, and that very few people get taught to do that. And if the state is like this, then what is it in you that helps to do this? If the state is hateful, then what is it in you that helps to become loving? Everybody's different. For Charles and I, music really helps, you know, and probably for a lot of you. So it's always knowing yourself enough to know what can shift you from all these adjectives, the closed offness, the overprotected, the hateful, the unforgiving, into this other thing. Well, that's your recipe. I don't know your recipe, but I know mine. Yeah, Laura.
I really love speaking of the divine as love.
Mm-hmm.
First, because it's universal, and we don't have to attach any one particular image of God to it. Also because it helps us in this transition from one kind of broken heart to another, when we can perceive that there actually is some love manifested around us. Very short story at a time when I was quite unwell and despairing. I don't know how it happened, but suddenly I remembered that my late mother had loved me with no conditions attached. Not every mother is able to do this, but mine was, just because I existed. And then my despair started to fade.
Yes.
I mean, it took months and a long time, but it was love.
Well, I stumbled across, I'm sure many of you out here who are Christians know this a little bit from Philippians. I wrote it down somewhere. It's a prescription for exactly what we're talking about. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report. I love that line. In other words, the good news. If there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. So Lord just gave us a beautiful example of this Christian prescription, which is, when I'm in despair, think of something that's really good and pure, like my mother's love. So if you're looking for something, that would be one answer that I would say is a really good answer. Yeah. Yes?
When you talk about the broken heart, of this parable of Jesus flashing through my mind, the parable of the lost son. Both parable of the lost, the prodigal son.
The prodigal son, yes.
And then both of the younger and the elder both have broken heart toward the dad,
Yeah.
but the younger broken in the right way and returned to the father, but the older one broken heart with jealousy and envious,
Yes.
and refused to come closer to the father. So
One heart is very alive, the other heart is more dead.
yeah,
Such
so,
a beautiful example. I'm glad
Yeah,
you brought that
just-
up. Yeah. I think if you start looking into mythology and scripture, you'll just find story after story that illustrates what we're talking about. And that's a very, very good one. Yeah. So, ultimately, so somebody else? Yeah, one more. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, when you're also coming out of the dark place, sometimes it's being able to reach out and love your neighbor before you can love yourself. It's not necessarily always out of love of self that you can love neighbor. Like, I've seen times where people are really struggling, and yet there's things they won't accept for themselves, but they'll be able to turn around and do it for a family member or a friend. And that kind of is like this begetting cycle of love.
Yes. Well, the sequence should, I shouldn't say should, but I think the sequence is always best. Loving the other, and then through that, one does find the love for yourself. If it starts with you, it just tends to be a bit insular and circular. Yeah, yeah. So, this idea of love being within us, for the Sufis, they would say that the only way to God is through one's own heart, but not only that, the other way to God is to touch that through one's fellow human beings' hearts. And if you can do one without the other, it's not enough. It needs to be both. And then at that point, they would say, now this is the human path to, and here's another phrase that you can try out, Ishq Allah, Mabud Allah. This is one of the standard phrases of the Sufi path. And what does it mean? Well, guess what? It means the same thing that's found in Christianity, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, Hinduism. It means God is love. What religion doesn't say this? There's no religious tradition that doesn't say in some way or another, God is love. The second part is God is the beloved. Now, usually this is translated as God is love, God is lover, and God is the beloved. So when we're in a state of love, we are in the state of God. We are the lover because we are loving. And so that is also God in the verb of the lover. And God is the beloved. Whatever we're loving, that's also God. And so the Sufis will say this through song, they'll say it through repetition, they'll say it through zikr. Ishq Allah Mabud Allah, Ishq Allah Mabud Allah. And there's a song that I'd like to finish up with that talks about heart energy. It's actually, this song, you've come here today, and I'm going to give these to you for free. It has the secret of love. So, no extra charge, but there is a chorus at the end that you might want to join in, which is Ishq Allah, Ishq Allah, Ishq is love, Allah, Mabud, which means the beloved, Mabud Allah, Ishq Allah, Mabud Allah. And it's 5 minutes long. Can we go right to 1 o'clock? Is that okay? If you have to leave, I know that people are on schedules. I won't be insulted if you leave in the middle. This song is the biography of your heart. I think all of you are old enough that I can say that, because there's a lot of stuff that happens in this song that tells us about the story of our heart. I've drunk the bowl of poison from the hands of love as nectar, and been raised above life's joy and pain. My heart aflame in love is set afire every heart that came in touch with it. My heart's been rent and joined again. My heart's been broken and made whole. My heart has been wounded. My heart has been healed again. 1,000 deaths my heart has died, but thanks be to love it lives yet. 1,000 deaths my heart has died, but thanks be to love it lives yet. not caused by my one tear. With my deep sigh the earth trembled, and when I cried out my beloved's name, I shook the throne of God in heaven. I bowed my head in humility, and on my knees I begged of love. Disclose to me, I pray thee, O love, thy secret. She took me gently by my arms and lifted me up above the earth and whispered into my ear, whispered into my ear. My dear one, thou thyself art love, art lover and the beloved, whom thou hast adored, whom thou hast adored. My dear one, thou thyself art love, art lover and the beloved, whom thou hast adored, whom thou hast adored. Thou thyself art love, art lover and the beloved. Thou thyself art love, art lover and the Thank you, my friends. It's been really nice to talk with you. Thank you.
We don't usually apply afterwards.
Oh, well. A musician always will take the applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. That was exquisite. And my heart is very reluctant to go into the head mode of announcements. I think, however, that we should go there for a moment. And Richard, maybe you want to describe next Thursday's event? Well, I think the live stream people will hear you better.
Multiple audiences.
Hello, live stream people. I haven't been talking to you yet. Sorry, I forgot to address it to them.
So next Thursday is April the 7th. That will be the last chapel service of the semester. And that service is led by all of the faculty. So we'll be sharing the liturgy together. And I hope that you will all come for that last service. There'll be some special events connected with the service. A couple of students honored right at the end of the service. We'll leave that a bit of a mystery so that you'll all come to solve it. And secondly, following the service in the lower auditorium, we're going to be having a book launch. These are books that professors at VST have published in the last couple of years, and what I can see so far is there's about 15 of them. And they will be on display for you there to see, and we'll provide a complete bibliography so you can go home and order them all immediately. So we'll hope you'll all be there for the last week of chapel. I think Mari also has an announcement.
So I know that the last couple of years we've had a general extension, and we're not doing that this year. But I wanted to let you know that if you do need an extension, you should talk to me. And maybe people who are here or on the live stream could take on the responsibility of telling everyone who is not here that you should not suffer in silence. Just come to me.
Cry out in your desperation.
Hello, good afternoon. I'd just like to share there is a new ESL English as second language course, very affordable one organized by, I suppose, of a VST student. So his name is Krishna, and he is providing an English course extremely cheaper than the commercial price. It's an organization for refugees, and it's located in the southeast Vancouver. So if you know newcomers, refugees, families of students, faculties, whatever, please let me know. Yeah, this is a big need and a big opportunity for immigrants. Thank you.
Thanks, Alfonso.
I would like to repeat my standard announcement. This year's Interreligious Studies Conference on the theme Religious Responses to Climate Change takes place May 24th to 26th. There's a ton of information about it on the website. Please do come. It's an incredible 2 days of exchange and learning and meeting new people and forming new working groups and friendships that takes place at VST. So we encourage you. You can attend either via Zoom or in person or any combination thereof. I also want to shed just a little bit of light on Richard's mystery about who will be honored next week, because many of you know these two students and might want to come and celebrate them. They are Bella Sherman and Jean Angus, two retired students who have audited 17 VST courses together. And as they are auditors and not eligible for graduation, these 5 minutes at the end of service will be their graduation ceremony. So please do join us. Anything else, Liz? Great. Thank you, Amir, again. And everyone is invited to join us downstairs for soup. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody. Sorry about Well, it actually wasn't so strange. I just want to say thank you. You really speak from your heart. It's amazing. I'm glad. I'm so much. It's cool. Yes. My name is Daniel.
very long time for Indonesia. Yeah, mostly populated. Yes, I know. I am a minority there. Okay, you're Christian? Yeah, yeah, but I have many good Muslim friends also in Indonesia. I'm still in touch with them today. So yeah, when I joined Sufi, it's interesting. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Okay, are you enjoying stuff? Yeah.